So one of the most interesting online rabbit holes to me is the lost media community. So these guys will track down things like TV episodes or commercials that were not properly preserved and do the work to archive them online, sometimes found through home recordings, and sometimes efforts are made to reach people that were involved in the production. And as a comic fan, I was interested in learning about some of the stories that have been lost to time. So there isn't much talk about comics in the lost media space, and a lot of the reason for that is even some of the rarest comics have at least a few copies that have survived being a printed format. Most comics that have made it to print have at least a few surviving copies. Some of the earlier comics from before the 1950s were destroyed in things like paper drives or just treated as disposable media. We truly have no way of knowing how many comics were actually lost, so for this video, I wanted to focus on books that were proven to have existed but are not available to read anywhere. The first one I wanted to talk about was the earliest example, and it was The Superman from 1933. So Superman was introduced in Action Comics #1 in 1938, created by Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster. And that book was not their first attempt at Superman. There were actually a couple prototypes that came 5 years earlier. The first one being The Reign of the Superman, which was published in Siegel and Shuster's own magazine, Science Fiction #3. And this featured a dark, villainous version of Superman who was very different than the character that we know today. And although extremely rare, there are a few surviving copies. The second attempt, titled The Superman, featured a hero much closer to the version we know today, with the notable difference that this Superman was a human and not an alien. And the reason this comic is lost is because it had been rejected by publishers so many times that Siegel and Shuster actually had it destroyed. And unfortunately, all that survived is the cover image. So this next one that I wanted to talk about is interesting to me because I'm a big Green Lantern fan, and I never knew that the storyline Emerald Twilight from 1994 that featured Hal Jordan going evil and turning on the Green Lantern Corps was almost a completely different story. At the time of Emerald Twilight's release in 1994, the Green Lantern title was struggling, and Emerald Twilight was marketed along with the death of Superman and the breaking of Batman as a new, fresh spin on Green Lantern. So at the time, Gerard Jones was writing the Green Lantern title. At the end of Green Lantern issue 47, Hal Jordan seems calm and ready to move on, making his shift all the more shocking to readers. And that's because it was never supposed to happen. The story was advertised as Superman and the Justice League teaming up with Hal to fight two opposing forces of Guardians of the Universe. Promotional images were sent out, and Gerard Jones went a little bit deeper into what his plans would have been. In this version, Hal would have still turned his back on the Lantern Corps and become his own hero called the Protector, leaving the door open for a new Lantern to take his place. But Hal was still intended to remain a force for good in the DC universe, and it was actually Denny O'Neil who took the axe to the project. He decided that it was not enough of a change and brought in Ron Mars to complete the new version of the story. and that's where we got the book that we have today. So it makes it seem like the books were in fact finished and were pulled at the last second. And interestingly, a prequel to Emerald Twilight, Emerald Interlude, was actually planned to be released in DC's Legends of the DC Universe line, and the books were completed but never released. All that's been found is one page, where we get to see Hal's fall to madness while he recites the Green Lantern Oath. In the late 90s, Marvel teamed up with AOL to release Cyber Comics, and these were described by people as being standard comics combined with like animated GIFs to create a bit of a unique experience you could only get on the web. And these seem to be remembered quite fondly by people who did read them, and they did tie into the regular Marvel continuity. But unfortunately, when the site was taken down, none of the comics were actually archived, so most of these have been completely lost. And the one that has piqued the most interest is Gambit, The Hunt for the Tomorrow Stone. And the reason that one has garnered so much attention is because the comic is actually referenced in a mainline Gambit book. I believe it was Volume 3, issue number 12. And the people who worked on the book hardly even remember it. Only some black and white pictures have ever been found. In 2014, the New 52 was coming to an end, and DC was getting ready to release a new line of books under DCU. And one of those books was called Grayson, where Dick Grayson fakes his death and goes undercover as a secret agent. So the ongoing Nightwing series was set to end at issue number 30. And it was written by James Tynion with art by Megan Hetrick. But in an effort to connect this book more to the upcoming Grayson book, Tynion was actually removed from the project at the last second, and creative teams from the Grayson book were brought in to do the finale. So Tynion's issue number 30 was complete. It was inked, it was lettered, ready to go, and never made it to press. And unlettered pages were actually auctioned off, so all the pages are available to view online. And James Tynion, a few years back, actually tweeted out one page with the lettering, but at this current time, that one completed page is all that's been found, and the rest of the story is considered lost. And another example of a webcomic gone missing. Temple Run was an extremely popular mobile game in the early 2010s, and there was actually a comic series released. It was released through its own app in collaboration with Ape Entertainment, who eventually went out of business, and along with them, the app disappeared, and the comics have not surfaced since. The Internet Archive actually has the original iTunes listing that shows 7 issues had been released. The first 2 issues were available for free, and the remaining cost 99 cents. And it is suspected that there were 2 more, making it a total 9 issues. Issue 8 was seemingly released on August 8th, 2013, and no information's been found on the suspected 9th issue. The only issue that was ever found was issue number 1, that had a limited physical release. I actually found out about this one through a Reddit post, and the original poster there actually reached out to the developers of Temple Run, looking for any leads that they could find. And unfortunately, it seems that when Ape Entertainment went under, all contact they had was cut. This last one is a little bit more up in the air about whether or not it actually existed. So in 2011, there was a comic series for the show Family Guy announced to be released by Titan Comics, and solicitations were put out for the first 2 issues. There was even a Twitter account for it that was selling a 12-issue subscription, and then the book never came. It was advertised for a July 27th release. It looks like promotion was done for the book up until sometime in June. An interview with the editor from a month earlier made it seem like everything was all ready to go, but the book never came out. And something interesting to note is that everything I could find about this book listed 2 artists, but no writers. So it's up in the air, debated about how much of this book was actually done, if any of it was actually done, if maybe it was overpromised. But being that it was a month off from release, we could imagine that there would likely be something done for it if there were 2 covers, but who knows, maybe it was just overpromising and there never actually was a writer assigned to this book. Who knows, but it was canceled without any notice. And I really don't like asking, but if you like this and you want more videos in this style, it would mean the world to me if you left a like and a comment. Subscribe if you're not, because YouTube's kind of boxed my channel into one type of content, which is kind of the comic shop, comic haul type of videos, and I love those videos. I do still plan on making them, but I've always wanted to dive deeper, and I just feel like sometimes with how YouTube recommendations are, it almost feels like it's not worth the effort for something like this. It takes a lot. It's taken me a lot of time to research this, and I'd love to do more. I have so many ideas. I have things that I've started and take a lot more research than this. It can be a little bit demotivating to put in all that work to make a big video when me just going out to the comic shop is gonna get like 10 times the views. The reason I do these is because I love doing it and I want to talk to you guys about this stuff. The reason I made this video is because I couldn't find a good video on YouTube or really anywhere. I couldn't find like a good comprehensive list. So I wanted to put together my own version of it, and I plan on doing more of that, but it would really mean a lot if you could do those things, and thank you very much. Have a good day.